What would you do if someone struck you on your own plane? If the world was watching, would you fight back with anger or with something far more powerful? Dr. Selina Harper, the calm yet commanding CEO of Harper Aerospace, thought she had seen it all in the high-stakes world of aviation. But on one flight, a flight attendant's hand across her face set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. Passengers stared. Cameras rolled. The insult wasn't just personal. It was a statement that she did not belong, even on a jet connected to her own empire. But instead of lashing out, Selina chose precision over rage, turning humiliation into a high-altitude showdown that would shake an entire industry. What happened in the tense minutes that followed? How did one calm voice and a single strategic decision lead to corporate resignations, sweeping reforms, and a legacy that still echoes in airports today? Tonight, we step into the cabin where it all began. Before we start, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel because this is a story you won't forget. Crack! The sharp, skin-on-skin sound cut through the luxury cabin like a gunshot. A hush fell over Horizon Sky Flight HZ-209. First class, 34,000 feet above the Atlantic, had never heard a sound like that. The flight was less than 2 hours from Miami, the service carts tucked away, the ambient hum of the engines blending with the muted clink of champagne glasses. But now, all that remained was silence. Dr. Selina Harper didn't move. She sat perfectly still in seat 1A, her head turned slightly from the force of the blow. A thin ribbon of crimson traced the curve of her lower lip before dripping onto the lapel of her tailored navy suit. Across from her, flight attendant Karen Holt's chest heaved. Her right hand hung in the air for a moment too long, trembling. Her nails painted a shade of corporate beige. "You people need to learn your place," Karen said. Her voice was low, but it carried to every corner of the cabin. 13 passengers froze in place. No one reached for the call button. No one spoke. Instead, they reached for something else. Phones. From leather briefcases, from designer handbags, from the seat back pockets. The glowing rectangles rose like an audience holding up lighters at a rock concert, each one recording from a different angle. Selina exhaled slowly through her nose. She could taste the metallic tang of blood, but her expression didn't change. No outrage, no shouted protest, just a stillness that felt heavier than rage. Her mind flicked briefly to the voice of her late father. "Never let them see you rattled. Lena, calm is a power." Karen shifted her stance, a faint smile of self-satisfaction creeping across her face. "Maybe now," she said, "you'll show some respect to the crew." Selina's gaze moved past her, down the aisle. Several passengers avoided eye contact. Others stared openly, their faces a blend of shock and something else. Anticipation. In seat 2B, a tall man with sandy hair, Ethan Cross, she'd learned his name during boarding, held his phone steady, eyes narrowed. Across the aisle in 3C, Maya Lynn's fingers danced over her screen, her phone already streaming to someone on the ground. Selina adjusted her posture, straightening her back against the leather seat. The platinum boarding document sat on the tray table in front of her, next to a folder she hadn't touched since takeoff. Karen's voice broke the silence again. "You think just because you have a nice suit and some fancy paper you can sit here? These seats are for real business leaders, people who earned it?" Selina's eyes met hers, calm and unblinking. "I am in my assigned seat." Karen laughed without humor. "Assigned? Please. I've been working this route for years. I can spot a fraud from a mile away." In 4A, a young woman in a gray hoodie gasped audibly. Ethan Cross turned slightly, angling his phone so the exchange was framed perfectly. Selena didn't look at the cameras. Her gaze stayed fixed on Karen. Her voice measured, "You're making an assumption." Karen leaned in, close enough that Selena could smell the faint scent of synthetic floral perfume. "Not an assumption. Experience. I've seen your type before. Always trying to sneak into first class. Always pretending you belong." The phrase "your type" hit the air like an electric charge. Selena noticed the subtle intake of breath from Maya Lin. Ethan's jaw tightened. Even the man in 1C, who had been quietly reading a financial report, lowered his paper. Selena reached up and touched her lip lightly. Her fingertip came away red. She glanced at the blood, then set her hand down slowly on the armrest. Karen straightened, her chin high. "If you don't move back to economy right now, I'll call the captain." Selena's calm deepened. She knew every square inch of this aircraft, every bolt, every rivet, every safety system, because she had designed them. The irony was bitter and almost beautiful, but not yet, not here. She folded her hands in her lap, her voice even. "Do what you think is necessary." Karen turned on her heel, marching toward the galley. Conversations buzzed softly between rows, like bees disturbed in a hive. Ethan Cross spoke under his breath, just loud enough for the woman beside him to hear. "She's making a huge mistake." Selena let her eyes drift to the oval window. Far below, the Atlantic shimmered in the late afternoon light, a sheet of liquid silver. She allowed herself one long breath. She had been here before, not this exact moment, but moments like it. Boardrooms where she was the only black woman at the table. Conferences where assumptions wrapped around her like chains. Gate agents who hesitated just long enough before scanning her pass, but never on her own aircraft. Footsteps returned. Karen's voice cut through again. "Captain's been informed. If you don't comply when we land, security will handle it." Selena didn't look up. She reached into her carry-on and withdrew a small leather case. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a platinum pin shaped like a pair of wings, the emblem of Harper Aerospace. She set it gently on the tray table beside the boarding document. The cabin seemed to lean in. Karen glanced at the pin, then scoffed. "Nice knockoff. Did you get it online?" Selena said nothing. Karen stepped closer again, lowering her voice but making sure the surrounding passengers could still hear. "You know, you could have avoided all this if you just knew your place from the start." Selena's eyes lifted to meet hers, steady as steel. "And where exactly is that?" "According to you," Karen's smirk widened, "not here." The words hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Selena let them sit for a moment, then reached for a bottle of water from her side table. She twisted the cap slowly, took a small sip, and placed it down with precision. In her mind, she was already counting the minutes to Miami, counting down to the moment when the full weight of what had just happened would land not on her shoulders, but on Karen Holt's entire world. Outside, the sun was starting to sink, casting the clouds in shades of gold and fire. Inside, the tension was thick enough to taste. Selena Harper leaned back in her seat, her face unreadable, the platinum wings catching the cabin light. She wasn't in a hurry. After all, the reckoning hadn't even begun. 20 minutes before the sound that froze the cabin. First class was a quiet island of comfort in the sky. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The scent of warm bread drifted from the galley. Passengers settled into their oversized seats, cocooned in the hum of the engines. Dr. Selena Harper had been reviewing a quarterly report on her tablet, her reading glasses perched low on her nose. The numbers were good, very good. But she had learned long ago that numbers rarely impressed people who had already decided not to respect you. Karen Holt approached with a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her smile was thin, more an expression of polite obligation than welcome. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass again?" Selina glanced up, her eyes calm. Of course. She reached into the side pocket of her handbag and pulled out the sleek platinum boarding document, embossed with the Horizon Sky crest. She handed it over without breaking eye contact. Karen studied it for a long moment, tapping the corner against her clipboard. "These seats are for our premium travelers, executive tier only." "I understand," Selina replied. Her tone was even, almost gentle. Karen tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Do you? Because this ticket is for business owners, company leaders, people who actually earned their way here, not everyone qualifies." In seat 2B, Ethan Cross paused mid-sip of his champagne. Across the aisle, Maya Lynn lowered her magazine just enough to watch over the top edge. Selina folded her hands in her lap. "My credentials meet the requirements." Karen's voice sharpened. "I'd like to see an ID and a credit card that matches this ticket." Selina reached into her wallet and produced a driver's license and a black Diamond Centurion card, the kind that required $250,000 in annual spend. She placed them neatly on the tray table. Karen barely glanced at them. "Anyone can get these." Selina's brow lifted slightly. "Is there something else you need?" "Just honesty," Karen said. "I don't know how you got this ticket, but these seats aren't for people like you." The words landed like a slap without the sound. Selina didn't flinch. Her father's voice echoed in her head, steady and warm. "Calm is power. Lena, let them overplay their hand." Ethan's phone was already in his palm, the camera quietly recording. Maya's thumbs hovered above her screen, a text half-typed to someone on the ground. Selina's voice was still soft, but now with a thread of steel. "People like me," Karen leaned down slightly, her perfume drifting forward. "You know exactly what I mean. I've seen your type before, always finding a way to cheat the system, always expecting special treatment." The air in the cabin shifted. A man in 4A glanced over his shoulder. The older woman in 1C set down her coffee. Selina's heart rate didn't change. She had been through too many boardrooms where the smile hid the knife, but she also knew the knife was out now. "Ma'am, I'm asking you to move to economy where you belong," Karen continued. Selina didn't move. "This is my seat." Karen straightened. "Then I'll have to involve the captain. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." In the back of the cabin, a tall man in a dark suit moved quietly up the aisle. Air Marshal Carlos Vega had the kind of presence that made people instinctively clear a path. He didn't speak yet, just observed from a few rows away. Selina opened her tablet again, eyes flicking back to her report as if the conversation were already over. Karen didn't like being ignored. "You think you can just sit there and pretend like you belong? But I know your type. You people always find some angle." Selina's head lifted, her eyes meeting Karen's with a slow, deliberate turn. "You keep using that phrase. You people." Karen smirked. "If the shoe fits." Ethan Cross's camera caught every word. Maya Lynn's phone was now streaming live to a colleague in New York who worked for a media outlet. Selina closed her tablet with a soft click. "I'm not moving." Karen's nostrils flared. "Then I'll count to 10, and if you're still here, I'll call security when we land." Selina gave a small nod. "Do what you think is best." Karen stepped back, glancing over her shoulder toward the galley. Selina could hear the faint scrape of a pen against paper as Karen made a note on her clipboard. Carlos Vega took a step closer. Still silent, his eyes moving between the two women. He had seen this kind of exchange before, too many times. Selina looked down at her lap, focusing on her breathing. She felt the pull of two impulses. One, to stand and announce exactly who she was, to pull every ounce of authority into the open. The other, to wait, to let the situation unfold until there would be no room for excuses or denials. She chose patience, her mother's voice this time. Timing, Selena, let them hang themselves with their own rope. Karen returned, her tone sharper now. Last chance. Move to economy. Selena met her eyes. No. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. We'll do this the hard way. She reached out and took hold of Selena's forearm. It was meant to be firm, but there was an edge of aggression in the grip. Selena's voice was quiet, but unmistakable. Remove your hand. For a moment, Karen hesitated. Then she released her grip, but only to step back and deliver the open-handed slap that would echo through the cabin minutes later. The sting was immediate, but Selena's composure was unbroken. She could feel the eyes on her, the silent witnesses to something ugly and undeniable, somewhere deep inside. A clock started ticking. 39 minutes to Miami. 39 minutes until this would no longer be an isolated insult at 34,000 feet, but the opening act of something much larger. Selena picked up a napkin from her side table and pressed it gently to her lip. Her voice, when it came, was steady. Are you finished? Karen tilted her chin upward. For now. Selena leaned back in her seat. The platinum boarding document was still on the tray table, untouched. The case holding the Harper Aerospace pin was in her bag. Waiting. Not yet. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the hum of the engines fill the space where anger wanted to be. She thought of her father again, of the way he used to rest his hand on her shoulder before a big presentation. You don't have to match their heat. You just have to hold your ground. She would. And soon they would learn exactly whose ground they were standing on. The sting still lingered on Selena Harper's cheek, though she refused to raise a hand to touch it. Her gaze stayed fixed on the forward bulkhead as the murmur of the cabin settled into an uneasy silence. The slap had been quick, almost mechanical, but it carried with it decades of unspoken assumptions, centuries of quiet exclusion. Karen Holt hovered for a moment, as if expecting Selena to stand up in protest or crumble into apology. When nothing came, she took a small step back, arms folding across her chest. From behind, Ethan Cross shifted in his seat, angling his phone for a better shot. Maya Lin, still leaning toward the aisle, mouthed something to the man in 1C that Selena could not catch. The low whir of the engines filled the space between them. Carlos Vega, the air marshal, stepped forward at last. His approach was deliberate, his shoes barely making a sound on the carpet. Everything all right here. His voice was neutral, but his eyes scanned the scene in quick, practiced sweeps, landing finally on the thin red line of blood on Selena's lip. Karen was quick to respond. Yes, Marshal. I was just dealing with a disruptive passenger. She gestured toward Selena with the flat of her palm. She's refusing lawful crew instructions and creating a disturbance in first class. Selena did not look at her accuser. Instead, she turned to Carlos and spoke evenly. I am in my assigned seat. I have complied with every instruction except the demand to move to another cabin. Carlos's brow furrowed. May I see your boarding pass, ma'am? Without a word, Selena slid the platinum boarding document across the tray table toward him. It gleamed under the cabin lights, embossed and flawless. Karen scoffed softly. Anyone can fake one of those. Selena's lips pressed together for the briefest moment before she reached into her handbag. She withdrew a small black leather case and opened it with a quiet snap. Inside was a polished platinum pin shaped like a pair of stylized wings. The Harper Aerospace insignia, its edges catching the light. She set it beside the boarding document. Carlos picked up the pin, turning it over in his palm. He had seen the symbol before, on press releases about billion-dollar aircraft contracts and at industry galas where only the most powerful names in aviation were invited. "This yours?" he asked. Selena's eyes met his. "It is." Karen laughed. A sharp burst that sounded too loud for the space. Please, she probably bought that online. Half the people on social media sell fake badges. Ethan Cross's camera caught every flicker of expression. The disbelief on Karen's face, the calm certainty on Selena's, the growing tension in Carlos's jaw. Carlos handed the pin back, his eyes narrowing slightly as he pulled a small device from his inner jacket pocket. He scanned the boarding document, waiting as the screen blinked, then displayed a match. Passenger Dr. Selena Harper. Occupation Chief Executive Officer, Harper Aerospace. He slid the device away. Expression unreadable. "Thank you." "Ma'am." Karen took a step closer, voice rising. "You're not seriously falling for that. She's obviously..." Carlos cut her off with a raised hand. "Ms. Holt, I'd advise you to choose your next words carefully." Selena remained still, but inside her mind there was movement. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing against her ribs. She could end this now with a single sentence, one declaration of ownership and authority. But her father's voice was back, as steady as the engines. "Not yet. Timing is everything." She glanced at her watch. 35 minutes to landing. 35 minutes for Karen Holt to keep digging her own grave. Karen turned away in frustration, muttering under her breath about passengers playing the race card. Selena inhaled slowly, steadying herself. The urge to respond was there, but she tamped it down. Every second Karen spoke was another thread in the net she was weaving around herself. Carlos stayed close now, his presence a silent deterrent. He had been in the aisle long enough to see the subtle shifts in the other passengers. Shoulders squaring, phones tilting for better angles, whispered exchanges. Ethan caught Selena's eye for a brief second. His expression was one of recognition, not just of her face, but of the kind of strength she was showing. Karen returned from the galley with a damp cloth in hand. She extended it toward Selena with a mockery of kindness. "For your lip," she said. Selena looked at the cloth, then at Karen. "No, thank you." The refusal seemed to irritate Karen more than the injury itself. She dropped the cloth onto the tray table and crossed her arms again. "Suit yourself." Selena leaned back in her seat, her mind already running through the checklist she had built for moments like this. Evidence, witnesses, documentation. She knew the legal team at Harper Aerospace would have the cabin footage secured before the wheels touched the ground. She knew the passengers' recordings would be on social media before they even reached the gate. But more than that, she knew she was in control. Not because of her title or her wealth, but because she refused to surrender her composure. Karen lingered a few feet away, clearly unwilling to let the matter drop. She made a show of checking on other passengers, but her eyes kept darting back to 1A. Selena picked up the napkin from earlier and dabbed her lip lightly. The bleeding had slowed, but the mark would remain. She decided she would not hide it. Some scars were worth keeping. Carlos finally stepped back, giving Selena a slight nod before moving toward the cockpit. She suspected he was already alerting the captain to the situation. Karen moved in again, lowering her voice to what she must have thought was a private tone. "You could have avoided all this. You could have just sat in economy and spared yourself the embarrassment." Selena's reply was barely above a whisper, but it carried enough weight to still the air between them. "The only embarrassment here is yours." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She took a small step back, her eyes narrowing. Selena turned her attention to the window. Below, The coastline was beginning to take shape on the horizon, bathed in the amber light of the setting sun. The city of Miami waited ahead, and with it, the full reckoning. She let her eyes linger on the view, her reflection faint in the glass. The woman looking back at her was unshaken, unbroken, and entirely in control. The hum of the engines was steady. Her heartbeat matched it. 33 minutes to go. The tension in the cabin was a living thing now. It pressed against the walls, filled the air vents, and curled around every passenger who sat watching, waiting for what would happen next. Dr. Selina Harper had not moved from her seat in 1A. The platinum boarding document remained on the tray table, glinting faintly under the reading light. Beside it, the Harper Aerospace pin lay like a small, polished piece of truth that no one could quite believe. In 2B, Ethan Cross leaned slightly forward. His voice was low, meant only for the woman in 3C. That's Selina Harper. She's not just some business traveler. She runs Harper Aerospace. Maya Lin, seated across the aisle, heard him anyway. She turned her head just enough to catch Ethan's eye, her own expression shifting into recognition. The Harper Aerospace. The jets, Ethan nodded once, his camera still recording. The jets, the defense contracts, the private fleet. That's her. The realization was passing like a quiet current through the cabin. People who had been on the fence were leaning inward now, eyes narrowing at Karen Holt. The math was simple. If this was true, the balance of power in the room was about to flip. Karen, oblivious to the silent shift around her, was still clinging to her narrative. She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes toward Carlos Vega, the air marshal. "You're not actually buying this, are you? This is just some woman with a fake ticket and a costume pin." Carlos's voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "Ms. Holt. I've confirmed her identity through the passenger manifest and my security device." Karen laughed sharply. "Those systems make mistakes. You can't tell me someone like her is really in 1A without pulling strings or scamming the system." Selina's gaze lifted from the pin to meet Karen's. Her voice was quiet, but every syllable was precise. "You seem very certain of what people like me are capable of." Karen's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "I've worked this route for a decade. I know when someone doesn't belong." Selina glanced at her watch. 30 minutes to landing. It was time to set the first domino in motion. She reached for her phone, its case a simple matte black, and pressed a single contact. The line picked up almost immediately. "This is Harper," Selina said. The voice on the other end was brisk, professional, and laced with respect. "Yes, Dr. Harper. We're online and ready." Selina's eyes stayed on Karen as she spoke. "Engage Horizon Protocol. Immediate implementation. Route all feeds to Central." A quiet acknowledgement came from the other end before she ended the call. Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. Maya's hands paused above her phone, mid-text. "What the hell is Horizon Protocol?" Karen asked, suspicion flashing across her face. Selina didn't answer. Instead, she shifted her gaze to Carlos. "How long until we begin descent?" "About 28 minutes, he replied. Selina gave a small nod and settled back into her seat, folding her hands in her lap. Around them, the cabin was no longer pretending to be indifferent. Passengers angled their bodies to catch the exchange. Phones stayed aloft, some streaming, others quietly recording. Even the man in 1C, who had been silent the entire flight, now sat with his arms crossed, watching Karen Holt with open disapproval. Karen tried to regain ground. "Fine. You want to play this game? I'll make sure the captain knows you're a problem passenger. We'll have security waiting at the gate." Selina tilted her head slightly. "I'm counting on it." Karen blinked, momentarily thrown off by the calm reply. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, choosing instead to stalk toward the galley with clipped steps. The moment she disappeared behind the curtain, Ethan leaned toward Selina just enough to murmur, "You really are her, aren't you?" Selina met his gaze. "Does it matter? It will to her," Ethan said. Selina considered that for a moment, then looked past him toward the aisle. Maya Lin was still watching, her phone resting face down in her lap now. Their eyes met briefly, and in Maya's expression, Selina saw a mix of respect and curiosity. Karen returned a minute later, her expression tight. "Captain says he'll address this after landing. In the meantime, you need to comply with crew instructions." Selina's eyes didn't leave hers. "I have complied with every lawful instruction given." Karen's jaw tightened. "Refusing to move is non-compliance. Refusing to surrender my rightful seat is not," Selina replied. Her voice was silk over steel. Carlos shifted his weight subtly, positioning himself so that Karen was always in his line of sight. His training told him the situation was no longer just about a seating dispute. This was heading toward something larger, something that might outlive the flight itself. Selina checked her watch again. 26 minutes. The legal team would already be in place in Miami. Horizon Protocol would be pulling the real-time cabin feed from the aircraft's internal systems. By the time the wheels touched down, nothing that happened here could be denied. Karen seemed to sense that control was slipping, but she wasn't ready to let go. She planted herself 2 steps from Selina's seat, arms folded. "You think you're intimidating me with your fancy words and attitude. You're not. I've dealt with worse." Selina's gaze was unflinching. "You haven't dealt with me." The words were quiet, but they carried across the cabin like a dropped pin in a silent hall. Ethan leaned back slowly, his lips pressed into a thin line to keep from smiling. Maya's phone lit up with an incoming message, but she ignored it. Karen blinked first, her eyes darting toward Carlos, then to the other passengers. She could feel the weight of their stares now. It was no longer curiosity, it was judgment. Selina reached down, opening her briefcase just enough to reveal a neatly stacked set of folders. On top was a contract with bold lettering across the header: Harper Aerospace, Strategic Airframe Supply Agreement. The first page alone bore a signature that matched the name on the platinum boarding pass. Karen glanced down, then back up at Selina. "What's that supposed to prove?" Selina didn't answer. She simply closed the briefcase again, the soft click of the latches punctuating the space between them. The engines hummed steadily beneath the floor. Outside, the ocean was giving way to the faint outline of the Florida coastline. Selina let herself breathe in the weight of the moment. Soon, the truth would not be something whispered in 2B or hinted at in 3C. It would be undeniable, public, and irreversible. And when that happened, Karen Holt's world would begin to collapse from the inside out. Selina looked at her watch once more. 24 minutes to landing. Plenty of time. The curtain to the galley swayed as Karen Holt lingered just beyond it, speaking in a low, urgent tone to someone on the interphone. The cabin was quiet except for the hum of the engines and the occasional clink of a glass as a passenger shifted in their seat. Dr. Selina Harper sat in 1A, her posture relaxed, but her mind calculating. Every second that passed was a step closer to the moment she had been quietly preparing for. She reached down and unlatched her briefcase again, her fingers brushing over the organized folders inside. When Karen reappeared, she carried herself like someone who still believed she had the upper hand. Her chin was high, her arms folded tight across her chest. "Captain confirms security will meet the flight when we land," she said with satisfaction. Selina's gaze lifted slowly. I'm sure they will. Karen tilted her head, a faint smirk playing on her lips. You're awfully calm for someone about to be escorted off a plane. Selina closed the briefcase halfway, resting her hands on the top. That's because I know something you don't. Karen's eyes narrowed. And what's that? Selina's voice was smooth, almost conversational. I know your history. A flicker of uncertainty passed over Karen's face, but she masked it quickly. Excuse me. Selina reached into the briefcase and drew out a single folder, opening it to reveal a printed document. She set it on the tray table, angling it so Karen could see. Complaint number 1, Detroit Metropolitan Airport, April 2021. Passenger Marcus Chen, business traveler. You accused him of stealing his own boarding pass and called security. The airline settled for $48,000. Karen's lips tightened. That was a misunderstanding. Selina flipped to the next page. Complaint number 2, Chicago O'Hare, September 2022. Rabbi David Goldstein. You told him his religious attire was suspicious and had him removed from the flight. Settlement $67,000. The whispering in the cabin grew louder. Maya Lynn's phone was back in her hand, her thumbs flying over the screen. Ethan Cross leaned forward, his camera catching every word. Karen's voice was sharper now. You have no right to those records. They're confidential. Selina's eyes didn't waver. Nothing is confidential to the CEO who signs your paycheck. Carlos Vega had stepped closer again, listening without interrupting. His expression gave nothing away, but his eyes were fixed on Karen. Selina turned another page. Complaint number 3, Phoenix Sky Harbor, March 2023. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, disabled veteran, Purple Heart recipient. You told her, and I quote, military welfare queens don't belong in first class. Settlement $89,000. Karen's face flushed, her voice rising. That's not how it happened. Selina's tone remained steady. 12 passengers heard you. 3 recorded it. The audio was clear enough for a court transcript. The cabin was silent except for the faint vibration of the engines. Even the man in 4A, who had kept to himself for most of the flight, was now watching openly. Selina closed the folder gently. You've made a career of deciding who belongs and who doesn't, but you made a mistake today. Karen, you picked the wrong passenger. Karen's breath came faster. She looked around the cabin, seeking support, but found only faces turned toward her in quiet judgment. Selina reached into the briefcase again, this time pulling out a small digital recorder. She held it up between 2 fingers. This has been recording since you first approached my seat. Every word, every slur, every unlawful demand. It's been streaming live to my legal department for the past 30 minutes. Karen's eyes widened. That's illegal. Selina shook her head. It's authorized as part of Horizon Protocol. All passengers consent to onboard monitoring when they purchase a ticket on a Horizon-operated flight. You know this. You've made the announcement yourself. Ethan shifted in his seat, muttering just loud enough for the woman beside him to hear. She's done. Karen glanced toward Carlos. You can't let her, Carlos interrupted, his voice calm but firm. She's within her rights. You're not. Selina set the recorder down on the tray table, next to the boarding pass and the Harper Aerospace pin. The 3 items formed a quiet tableau proof of passage, proof of identity, proof of evidence. She leaned forward slightly. You didn't just insult me. You didn't just strike me. You committed a federal offense against a government contractor on a commercial aircraft, and you did it in front of a cabin full of witnesses with multiple recordings. Karen's voice faltered. I didn't know who you were. Selina's eyes narrowed just slightly. And that's the problem, isn't it? You thought that mattered. The words hung in the air, heavy enough to make Karen take a half step back. Selena reached for another folder and opened it to reveal a glossy photograph of a sleek jet interior. This seat you're standing in front of, I designed it. The leather, the dimensions, the safety systems beneath it, my engineering, the pressurization system keeping us all alive right now, my patent. Karen looked down at the photograph, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Selena set the photo aside and pulled out another. This one showed her standing beside a team of engineers on an assembly line. Every rivet, every wire, every panel in this aircraft passed through a process I created. You may work this flight, Karen, but I built it. Silence again. Outside the window, the ocean was now dotted with small white wakes from boats cutting through the blue. Selena closed the briefcase with deliberate care. I am exactly where I belong. Karen's eyes darted toward the galley, but she didn't move. Her voice, when it came, was smaller. I didn't mean Selena cut her off gently. You meant every word, and now you'll face every consequence. Carlos cleared his throat quietly, glancing at his watch. We're 20 minutes from touchdown. Selena gave a small nod. Plenty of time. Karen turned away, retreating toward the galley without another word. Selena looked out the window again, the coastline of Florida now a clear strip against the horizon. She could feel the shift in the air, the moment of quiet before the storm. This wasn't over. It hadn't even truly begun. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and professional. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our initial descent into Miami International. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. For most passengers, that announcement meant the end of a journey. For Karen Holt, it marked the beginning of a reckoning she could not yet see in full. Dr. Selena Harper glanced at her watch. 19 minutes. She could work with that. The coastline was brighter now, sunlit buildings catching the light as the aircraft banked slightly to the right. In the reflection of the window, she could see her own face, still calm, her lip faintly swollen. From the galley, Karen's voice carried just enough for the first few rows to hear. She was on the interphone again. Yes, she's still in 1A. No, she hasn't moved. Yes, I told her it's against policy. Selena reached for her phone and typed a short message. Activate press team. Arrival gate confirmed. A reply came instantly. Legal and PR are on site. Security feed streaming to conference room. Board session live in 7 minutes. She slipped the phone back into her handbag and folded her hands in her lap. Carlos Vega stepped into the aisle near her row. His voice was low. She's still talking to the cockpit. They'll have security at the gate. Do you want me to intervene before we land? Selena shook her head. No. Let her keep building her case. Carlos's eyes flicked toward the galley curtain. You're sure every word she says is recorded, every action witnessed. She's doing my work for me. Ethan Cross leaned slightly forward from 2B. If you need passenger statements, I've got the whole thing on video. Selena allowed herself a small nod. Hold on to that. You may be getting a call from my legal department. Karen reemerged, her posture rigid. She stopped in front of 1A and crossed her arms. When we land, security will escort you off this aircraft. You'll answer for this in front of the captain. Selena's gaze was steady. I'm counting on it. Karen frowned at the answer but said nothing more. She moved down the aisle, checking on passengers with a brittle smile. Each interaction was quick, efficient, and laced with an underlying tension. Selena turned slightly toward the window, letting the sunlight warm her cheek. In her mind, she was already seated in the conference room that would appear on the screen in minutes. 12 board members, faces tight with unease. A CEO on the other end of the call who had no idea his airline's public image was about to be ripped open. Her phone buzzed again. Board connected. Secure feed ready. She slipped her Bluetooth earpiece into place, a barely noticeable movement. With one touch on her phone, her vision shifted from the cabin to a split screen of familiar faces in high-definition clarity. "Dr. Harper," said a voice from the other end, smooth but with a thread of apprehension. "We understand there's been an incident." Selina spoke quietly, just enough for the earpiece to pick up her words. That's one word for it. "You're about to understand another." On the screen, Robert Kane, CEO of Sky Vista Airlines, appeared in the center square. His gray hair was neatly combed, his tie perfectly straight. He smiled the kind of smile executives wear when they believe they're still in control. "Selina," Kane began, "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. We can address it after you've landed." "No." "Robert," Selina replied, "we're addressing it now. While I'm still in the seat, your employee told me I didn't deserve—" Kane's smile faltered. Employee Selina shifted slightly in her seat, the camera feed from her phone showing the side profile of Karen Holt a few rows down the aisle. Flight attendant Karen Holt. 3 prior discrimination complaints, all buried under settlements. Today, she added another to her record, and this time, it's against me. The reaction in the board squares was immediate. Eyes widened, papers shuffled. Someone cleared their throat. Kane leaned forward. "Selina." She cut him off. "You have 18 minutes until this plane lands and your brand becomes the top trending topic for all the wrong reasons. That's 18 minutes to decide if you're going to fix this or watch it burn." The silence from the other end was telling. Selina let it hang for a heartbeat before continuing. "I'm activating Horizon Protocol. My PR team will release the cabin footage to the press at the moment of touchdown unless I have your commitment on record." Kane's voice was quieter now. Commitment to what Selina's eyes flicked to the watch again. "We'll get to that in detail. For now, you'll listen." Carlos, standing nearby, watched her speak without knowing exactly what was being said, but he could tell from her posture that the real confrontation was already underway, just not in the space the rest of the passengers could see. Selina kept her tone even. This is no longer about one employee. It's about the culture that kept her employed after multiple documented incidents. It's about the message your company sends when it tolerates discrimination for the sake of avoiding a little bad press. On the screen, some of the board members looked down, avoiding her gaze even through the camera. Kane tried to recover his composure. "We value diversity and inclusion." Selina's voice cut clean through his sentence. "Spare me the marketing slogans. Robert, I'm not here for statements. I'm here for results." She ended the call without waiting for a reply. The coastline was closer now, the ocean's deep blue giving way to turquoise shallows. Selina could feel the shift in altitude as the aircraft descended further. The minutes were slipping away, but she knew exactly how she would use them. She glanced toward the galley where Karen had disappeared again. Her voice would be shaking now, Selina thought, the first tremors of understanding creeping in. Ethan's phone chimed softly. "My friend says your name is all over social media already. Someone here is live streaming. The story's getting traction." Selina allowed herself a single deep breath. The machine was already moving. She reached into her bag and touched the cool metal of the Harper Aerospace pin. It was a small thing, but it carried the weight of every aircraft she had helped design, every contract she had signed, every battle she had fought to claim her place. 17 minutes to go. The hum of the engines seemed quieter now, though Selina knew it was only the shift in air pressure as the aircraft descended. She adjusted the Bluetooth earpiece in her right ear and opened a secure app on her phone. The screen filled with faces, 12 of them arranged in a neat grid, each framed by a corporate backdrop. Sky Vista Airlines' board of directors was assembled in full. Some looked alert and ready. Others wore the glazed expressions of people pulled from lunches and weekend getaways to deal with something unpleasant. Robert Kane sat at the center tile, shoulders squared, his jaw set. His gray suit was immaculate, but there was a stiffness in his posture that Selina recognized from years of high-stakes negotiations. It was the look of a man trying to project control while the ground shifted beneath him. Selina's voice was calm. "I trust you've all been briefed on why we are speaking?" A woman in the top left square cleared her throat. "We understand there has been an incident involving one of our flight attendants," and Selina interrupted, her tone smooth but unyielding. "Not just an incident, a pattern. Your employee, Karen Holt, has 3 prior discrimination complaints, all settled quietly to avoid public attention. Today she added a 4th, and she made the mistake of targeting the wrong passenger." The room on the other end seemed to hold its collective breath. Kane lifted his chin. "Selina, surely we can." She cut him off again. "I am speaking. You will listen." On the screen, a few board members shifted uncomfortably. Selina allowed the pause to stretch, the silence settling like weight on their shoulders. "My mother once boarded a plane in Atlanta. She was in her Sunday dress, hat perfectly tilted, gloves pressed and clean. The gate agent looked at her ticket and told her she would be more comfortable in the back. No reason, just the assumption that she did not belong up front. That was 30 years ago. Today, Karen Holt stood in front of me and said the same thing, dressed in corporate uniform, paid by your airline, operating under your policies. Her gaze was steady as she spoke, each word measured. You have kept her on payroll, given her authority over passengers' experiences, and by doing so, you have endorsed her behavior." Kane spread his hands in a placating gesture. "We do not condone discrimination." Selina leaned slightly toward her phone, her voice dropping half an octave. "You enable it. That's worse." The statement hung heavy. No one on the board spoke. Selina continued, her tone almost conversational, which only made the words sharper. "This is not about one woman's bad judgment. It is about a corporate culture that values avoiding lawsuits more than protecting passengers. It is about how many more Karens you are willing to keep on the payroll because firing them might cause headlines." Kane exhaled through his nose, the first sign of visible strain. "What exactly are you asking for?" Selina glanced at her watch. 14 minutes to landing. She allowed herself a small smile. "We'll get to that. But first, I want to be sure we're clear about the stakes. I have real-time video from 6 angles in this cabin. I have audio of every word spoken since Karen Holt first approached me. I have independent passenger recordings, already uploaded to secure servers. When this plane touches down, my press team will release the footage to every major outlet unless I have your binding commitment to comprehensive reform." A man in the bottom row spoke for the first time. "Selina, you can't dictate our internal policy." She turned her gaze directly on him. "I can dictate whether you continue receiving Harper Aerospace aircraft and maintenance services, and I can dictate whether the public trusts your airline enough to buy another ticket." Kane's face had gone pale. "You're threatening a contract worth $920 million annually." "I am promising to terminate it," Selina replied, "if you choose not to act." For a moment, there was only the faint crackle of the secure connection. Selina could feel the shift as the weight of her words sank in. They were beginning to realize she was not bluffing. She softened her voice slightly, though not her stance. "This is not about me winning and you losing. This is about whether you are willing to change a system that harms people every day. If you refuse, you will lose far more than a contract. You will lose your reputation, your market share, and perhaps your positions. On the screen, a younger board member in the second row leaned toward her camera. "What do you want us to do?" Selina nodded once. "That is the right question." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Selina, you have to understand, making sweeping changes." She did not let him finish. "I have to understand nothing. You, however, have to understand that the clock is ticking. 13 minutes until the wheels touch down and your brand becomes synonymous with discrimination on a national scale." Several board members exchanged glances. Someone muttered something off camera, too faint to catch. Selina's eyes stayed locked on Kane. "I will give you my terms in writing before we land. You will have 24 hours to accept them. If you do, we begin the process of reform immediately. If you do not, I will ensure this incident is known in every corner of the industry and beyond." Kane swallowed hard. "Selina, you have been protecting your company at the expense of your passengers. I am done allowing that. The question is whether you are—" She ended the call without waiting for an answer. The cabin around her came back into focus. Carlos Vega stood nearby, his eyes scanning the passengers as if nothing unusual had happened. Ethan Cross leaned slightly into the aisle, curiosity written on his face. Maya Lin pretended to scroll her phone, but kept glancing towards Selina. Through the window, the Miami skyline was beginning to take shape, glass towers catching the late afternoon light. Selina slipped the phone into her bag and adjusted the Harper Aerospace pin on her lapel. It glinted against the navy fabric of her suit, a quiet signal of ownership, of authority that did not need to be announced to exist. Karen Holt had not returned from the galley. Selina imagined her back there, pacing in the narrow space, trying to convince herself she could still talk her way out of this. She checked her watch again. 11 minutes. The descent was smooth, the engine's pitch lowering as the nose angled toward the runway. Every mile closed was another step toward the confrontation waiting at the gate. Selina welcomed it. She leaned back, letting the hum of the cabin settle around her. In less than a quarter of an hour, the next phase would begin. And in that phase, there would be no more doubt about who belonged in seat 1A. The seatbelt sign chimed on. A soft ding that, for most passengers, meant they should gather their belongings and prepare for landing. For Selina Harper, it was the bell before the final round. She pressed her phone screen again, reopening the secure line to the Sky Vista boardroom. The faces reappeared instantly, their expressions tighter now, some pale under the harsh conference lighting. Robert Kane sat in the center, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on her like a man trying to read the last page of a book he was already afraid to finish. "We are short on time," Selina said evenly. "So, I will be direct." She pulled a single sheet of paper from her briefcase. The text was concise, bullet points written in her own hand. She had drafted these demands years ago, after the second time she was almost denied her rightful seat on a commercial flight. They had been sitting, waiting, for the right moment. Here is what will happen if Sky Vista wishes to continue operating with Harper Aerospace aircraft and support contracts. Her tone was calm, but her words had the weight of a court order. 1. Your current CEO, Robert Kane, will resign within 30 days. She let the sentence hang long enough for the murmurs to ripple through the board. Kane's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. 2. $100 million will be allocated to create the Sky Vista Passenger Equity Fund to compensate those who have been discriminated against or wrongfully removed from flights in the past 10 years. The woman in the top left tile shifted, her pen pausing mid-note. 3. Every Sky Vista employee from the boardroom to the baggage handlers, will undergo comprehensive bias and cultural competency training within the next 6 months. This will be facilitated by an independent organization of my choosing. She moved her eyes deliberately across the grid of faces. 4. A permanent anonymous reporting system will be established, overseen by an external firm, to investigate all allegations of discrimination or harassment. Reports will bypass internal management entirely. Selina lowered the paper slightly, but her gaze stayed sharp. 5. Karen Holt will be immediately terminated, her access revoked before this flight reaches the gate. Her file, along with records of prior complaints, will be turned over to federal investigators for review of potential criminal violations. Robert Kane's lips pressed into a thin line. Selina, this is non-negotiable, she said, cutting him off. You have 9 minutes to respond. Silence. Only the faint rumble of the engines beneath her seat. Kane glanced sideways, as if seeking counsel from the other faces on the screen. One of the older men leaned forward, whispering something, but the audio didn't carry. Selina continued, Failure to agree will result in immediate termination of all contracts with Harper Aerospace. Additionally, I will personally deliver the full evidence of this incident, along with the buried complaint records, to every major media outlet in the United States. I will file formal complaints with the FAA and the Department of Transportation, naming each of you as personally aware of and complicit in a pattern of systemic discrimination. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And I will not stop until federal prosecutors are involved. Someone on the board cleared their throat. Dr. Harper, with all due respect, your demands are my demands, Selina interrupted, are the bare minimum required to begin repairing the damage your company has done. On the screen, Kane's expression shifted. He no longer looked like a man who believed he could negotiate his way out. He looked like someone calculating whether he could survive the fallout. Why are you doing this? One of the younger members asked. Why not just settle? Selina's voice softened, but it lost none of its strength. Because this isn't about me. I could take a payout and never fly on your airline again. But there are millions of passengers who do not have the power I have. Passengers who get off a plane humiliated and believe there's nothing they can do. This is for them. In the cabin. A subtle shift occurred. Ethan Cross's camera was still rolling, but now his expression was less that of a detached observer and more of someone watching history happen. Maya Lynn's phone was flat on her lap, forgotten for the moment as her eyes stayed fixed on Selina. The board members exchanged glances. A few were nodding. The tide was turning. Kane leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. You'll have our answer when you land? You'll have 1 minute after touchdown, Selina corrected. Not a second more. She ended the call before he could reply. Outside, the aircraft banked slightly, aligning with the approach path. The Miami skyline filled the windows, sunlight bouncing off the glass towers. Selina slid the sheet of demands back into her briefcase and closed it with a soft click. She adjusted the Harper Aerospace pin on her lapel, feeling its familiar weight. Carlos Vega moved closer. Everything all right? Selina's eyes met his. Everything's about to be... From the galley, Karen Holt reappeared. Her expression was a strange mix of defiance and unease. She approached 1A but stopped short, as if sensing an invisible barrier. You're awfully quiet now, Karen said. Selina's voice was cool. Some things are better said at the right time. Karen tilted her head. And when's that? Selina glanced toward the window, where the runway was beginning to come into view. Soon. The landing gear lowered with a mechanical thud, vibrating faintly through the floor. The flaps extended. Passengers began shifting in their seats, gathering bags, straightening clothing. Selina remained still, her hands resting lightly on the armrests. She had walked into boardrooms full of adversaries, faced down billion-dollar negotiations, and dismantled companies twice the size of Sky Vista. This moment was no different. The plane descended smoothly, the ground drawing closer. She could almost feel the exact second the wheels would touch down, and with them, the moment Sky Vista's leadership would decide whether to salvage what remained or watch it collapse entirely. Her watch read 4:16 p.m. Touchdown in 3 minutes. Decision in 4. Selina allowed herself one slow breath, her heartbeat steady. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The wheels met the runway with a firm thud, followed by the deep roar of reverse thrust. The cabin jolted forward, then steadied as the brakes gripped. Outside, the landscape of Miami International rushed by in a blur of tarmac, taxiway lights, and stationary aircraft waiting their turn. In seat 1A, Selina Harper did not move. She let the inertia settle around her like a calm sea after a storm. This was the moment she had been building toward since the first sting of Karen Holt's hand across her face. Every second now would be measured, deliberate. Passengers reached for their bags, unbuckling seatbelts despite the seatbelt sign still glowing overhead. The attendants' voices began their usual chorus of instructions, but the atmosphere felt different. It was charged, like static before a lightning strike. From the corner of her eye, Selina caught Karen Holt's stiff posture as she leaned into the interphone, speaking quickly. The words were too low for the passengers to hear, but Selina could guess their content. She pictured the security team waiting at the gate, expecting to remove her like an unruly passenger. The engines wound down as the aircraft turned toward its assigned gate. Through the oval window, Selina could see the terminal growing larger, glass walls reflecting the sinking sun. What she also saw made her pulse quicken, not from fear, but satisfaction. Uniformed airport police stood in a cluster just beyond the jet bridge entrance, but they weren't alone. Behind them were men and women in tailored suits, earpieces discreetly coiled behind their ears, and behind them, cameras at least 4 news crews, their lenses pointed directly at the gate. Selina's phone buzzed once in her lap, a message from her PR chief. They're live. Statement will follow your signal. The aircraft came to a full stop. The seatbelt sign clicked off. A murmur ran through the cabin as passengers stood, pulling bags from overhead bins. The usual impatience was laced with curiosity. People sensed something was about to happen. Karen stepped into the aisle ahead of the forward door. Her voice was bright, falsely warm. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Miami. Please remain seated until we have reached the gate and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign. Her eyes flicked to Selina. There was a flash of what might have been triumph. Selina remained seated until the chime sounded, then rose slowly, smoothing the front of her suit. The Harper Aerospace pin caught the light as she stepped into the aisle. She didn't look at Karen. The front door opened. The warm Miami air met the cool cabin atmosphere, carrying the faint smell of jet fuel. A tall man in a dark suit stepped inside first, flashing credentials to the captain and first officer. His gaze swept the cabin, then settled on Selina. "Dr. Harper," he said with a nod. "Right this way." Karen's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me." "She needs to be detained." The man's voice cut clean through hers. "No, Ms. Holt, you do." 2 uniformed officers stepped forward. Their hands rested lightly on their belts, but their presence was unmistakably authoritative. Karen blinked, her mouth opening, then closing. I don't understand." The suited man handed her a folded document. "This is an order of immediate suspension pending investigation. Your access to Sky Vista property and systems has been revoked effective now." A ripple of sound passed through the cabin. Passengers craned their necks to see. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Karen's face flushed crimson. "This is ridiculous. One of the officers stepped closer. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us. I'm the one who called you," Karen protested. "That's correct," the officer said evenly. "And the investigation will take your statement. But you're leaving the aircraft now?" Selena watched, her face an unreadable mask. She had no satisfaction in watching someone be led away in front of strangers, but she did have relief that the cycle of protection and silence had been broken in public view. Karen's protests grew smaller as she was guided down the jet bridge, flanked by the officers. The suited man turned back to Selena. "We have a secure room ready if you'd like to make your statement here before heading to your press conference." Selena inclined her head. "I'll make it at the terminal. People deserve to see it." Behind her, passengers began to murmur louder. Ethan Cross leaned into the aisle, catching her eye. "You've got the whole flight on your side now." That was something. Maya Lin smiled faintly. More than something. Selena stepped into the jet bridge. The air was warmer here, buzzing with the hum of terminal life beyond. The suited escort kept pace beside her, speaking quietly into a microphone clipped to his lapel. As they emerged into the terminal, the full weight of the scene hit. Cameras turned as one, lights flared, microphones appeared like metal flowers blooming in the crowd. Reporters called her name, their voices overlapping in a rush of questions. She paused at the rope line, scanning the crowd. There were Sky Vista passengers holding their phones aloft, airport staff frozen mid-step, even travelers from other gates leaning over railings to see. Selena lifted her chin. "In the last 3 hours, you've seen what happens when someone believes they can diminish another human being because of bias, because of assumption, because of prejudice dressed in a uniform. You've seen it on this aircraft, and you've seen the response." Her voice was steady, carrying easily over the terminal noise. "This is not just about me. It is about every person who has been told they do not belong in a place they rightfully earned. It is about accountability, and it is about change." She stepped closer to the microphones. "I have given Sky Vista Airlines my terms for systemic reform. They have minutes to decide whether they will begin that change willingly or have it forced upon them under the weight of public and federal scrutiny." The cameras clicked in rapid bursts. The reporters surged forward slightly. Selena raised a hand. "I will not be answering questions until their decision is made public. But know this seat 1A belongs to whoever has earned it, not whoever fits someone's narrow idea of who should be there. That truth will outlast every policy and every boardroom." She turned then, following her escort toward the waiting conference room. Behind her, the buzz of voices swelled. The clock was still ticking. The conference room was glass-walled, perched above the terminal like an observation deck. From inside, Selena could see the crowd still gathered below, their faces tilted upward toward the opaque privacy panels. Cameras flashed each time a shadow moved across the glass. A bottle of chilled water sat untouched on the polished table in front of her. Carlos Vega leaned casually against the wall near the door, arms crossed, keeping watch without needing to be asked. Across from Selena sat 2 representatives from the airport authority, both looking like they had been swept up into something far bigger than their normal day's work. Selena's phone lay face down in front of her. She had given Sky Vista exactly 12 minutes to respond after she exited the aircraft. That was 3 minutes ago. The air in the room felt heavy, as though the glass walls were pressing inward. Selena kept her expression neutral, though she could feel the faint hum of adrenaline in her fingertips. She had played high-stakes games before, but this was different. This was not about market share or contracts. This was about what would ripple outward from this room into every future boarding gate in the country. The phone buzzed once, then again. She turned it over. The message was from Robert Kane himself. Board votes complete. Live call requested. She gestured for the airport's IT staff to patch the call through the conference system. Moments later, the wall screen lit up with the familiar grid of faces. The difference was immediate. No one was leaning back now. No one was pretending to check their notes. Every eye was on her. Kane's voice was measured, but there was a thread of resignation running through it. "Dr. Harper, the Sky Vista board has voted. The terms you outlined in your letter have been accepted in full." The words landed with a certain gravity. Around the table, the airport officials exchanged glances. Even Carlos's brow lifted slightly. Selena's posture didn't change, though her voice carried a thread of acknowledgement. And the timeline Kane cleared his throat. "My resignation will be effective within 30 days. The Passenger Equity Fund will be established immediately, with an initial transfer within 72 hours. Training contracts will be signed no later than Friday. The reporting system will be in place within 3 months, and Ms. Holt's employment was terminated as of 10 minutes ago." The boardroom grid was silent except for Kane's voice. Selena nodded once. "You've made the correct decision." One of the older board members leaned forward. "Dr. Harper, I hope you understand this will not be without disruption. There will be public backlash. Shareholders will demand explanations. They will get them," Selena interrupted, "in the form of better performance, fewer lawsuits, and a company they can be proud to own a piece of." "You should have done this years ago." There was no rebuttal. Kane's eyes searched hers through the screen. "You have what you came for. Will you withhold the footage?" Selena folded her hands loosely in front of her. "No. I will release it." A ripple of alarm passed across a few faces. "I will release it," she continued, with the statement that Sky Vista Airlines has acknowledged systemic issues and is implementing historic reforms as of today. The public will see what happened, but they will also see what you did in response. You can choose to frame this as a failure or as a turning point. That's up to you. For the first time, Kane looked as if a weight had shifted slightly off his shoulders. He gave a small nod. "We'll coordinate with your office. You'll coordinate with my office," Selena confirmed, "and you'll mean it." The call ended without pleasantries. The screen went black, leaving only their reflections in the glass. Carlos stepped forward. "So it's done." Selena exhaled, not quite a sigh. "It started. The real work comes next." She rose, smoothing the front of her suit jacket. Outside the conference room, the hum of the terminal was a living thing. The PR chief's message popped onto her phone again. "Press is ready. Camera's hot." The airport director gestured toward the door. "Whenever you're ready, Dr. Harper." The walk back to the terminal floor was short but deliberate. Each step echoed faintly in the corridor. She emerged to a wall of lights and microphones, the crowd thicker now, news tickers scrolling real-time updates above the gates. Selena stepped to the podium that had been hastily set up just beyond the rope line. The Sky Vista logo still adorned the background, though now it hung behind someone who owned the upper hand. Her voice carried without force, but with precision. This afternoon, an incident occurred aboard Sky Vista Airlines Flight 382. It was not the first such incident for this airline, nor the first for the employee involved, but it will be the last. Flashes strobed. Reporters leaned in. Sky Vista has agreed to immediate and sweeping reforms, including leadership change, the establishment of a passenger equity fund, mandatory training, independent oversight, and the permanent removal of personnel who violate the rights of passengers. Her eyes swept the crowd, catching lenses and faces alike. These measures are not a gift from Sky Vista. They are the cost of doing what should have been done from the beginning, treating every passenger with the dignity they deserve. Questions were shouted, but she didn't respond yet. Instead, she held up her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. The footage you've been waiting for will be available in minutes. It will show the truth. And alongside it, the acknowledgement from Sky Vista that change begins today. A collective murmur rolled through the press corps. She lowered the phone, meeting the gaze of the nearest camera. This is not about one airline. This is about an industry. Every gate agent, every flight attendant, every corporate officer watching this should understand silence will no longer protect you. Discrimination will no longer hide behind policy. And no one will be told they do not belong because of who they are. Her final words were deliberate, each one given room to land. The sky belongs to all of us. She stepped away from the podium, Carlos falling in step beside her. The crowd surged with more questions, but she did not look back. In the quiet of the service corridor beyond the press area, Carlos finally smiled. You didn't just win, Selena. You rewrote the rules. Selena glanced at him, her own smile faint but certain. That was the point. By the time Selena reached her car at the private exit, her phone was vibrating with constant notifications. Headlines were already spreading across news apps and social media feeds. A local station's live stream had clipped her entire press conference, the title flashing in bold letters, CEO confronts airline over discrimination, forces historic reform. She settled into the back seat of the black sedan, closing the door against the noise of the terminal. Carlos Vega slid in beside her, carrying the same unshakable calm that had been his anchor during the chaos. Across from them, her PR chief, Mariah Gordon, was tapping furiously on a tablet. It's everywhere, Mariah said without looking up. CNN, BBC, even Al Jazeera. Hashtags are trending in 12 countries. And Dr. Harper. She glanced up, a faint smile breaking through the urgency. The footage has been viewed over 7 million times in the first hour. Selena took the tablet, scrolling through the posts, clips from passengers on the plane, commentary from legal analysts, even grainy screenshots of Karen Holt being escorted down the jet bridge. Each one carried its own flood of reactions: anger, solidarity, disbelief, gratitude. One video caught her attention. It was from Maya Lin. The caption read, "This is what accountability looks like." Maya's voice narrated over the footage, her tone steady. I watched a woman stay calm while being humiliated, then watched her change the outcome for everyone in the room. That's power. That's leadership. Selena felt a quiet warmth at the words, but she didn't linger. This was not the moment for self-congratulation. As the car eased into the Miami traffic, she turned her gaze to the skyline. The glass towers reflected the evening light, golden at the edges. The city was moving, as it always had, yet something felt different to her. Carlos broke the silence. You know, you didn't just set a precedent for airlines. Other industries will be watching. That's the hope, Selena replied. Every corporation that hides behind policy will have to rethink it. Mariah leaned forward. We need to prepare for the next 48 hours. Sky Vista will release their own statement tonight. If they're smart, they'll echo your tone, but they might try to soften the impact. We'll need to control the narrative. Selena nodded. Draft our follow-up. Make it clear this is not the end of the conversation, it's the start. Her phone buzzed again this time, a call from an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but answered on instinct. Dr. Harper, a woman's voice said, shaky but clear. My name is Angela Price. I was removed from a Sky Vista flight 2 years ago because the attendant assumed I didn't belong in first class. They said it was a mistake, but I never got an apology. I saw what you did today. I just wanted to say, thank you. I wish someone had been there to speak up for me back then. Selena closed her eyes briefly. Angela, you don't have to wish anymore. The fund we're creating will look into past incidents. You'll hear from them soon. There was a pause, followed by a quiet sob. I never thought anyone would care. Thank you, Dr. Harper. Really. The call ended, but the echo of it stayed with her. The car pulled into the driveway of a low-lit hotel where Selena had reserved a suite for the night. She wasn't ready to go home yet. Home was safety, and tonight she still felt the weight of the battlefield. Inside the suite. She dropped her briefcase on the table and moved to the window. The view overlooked the ocean, dark and restless under the moonlight. In the distance, the faint lights of incoming flights dotted the horizon. Carlos placed a folder on the table. Press summaries, board statement drafts, and legal correspondence from Sky Vista's counsel. I'll review it all before morning. Selena nodded, but stayed at the window. Do you ever think about the people we don't hear from the ones who never say anything because they think it won't matter? Carlos glanced at her, then sat down. Every day. That's why today mattered. Mariah joined them with 2 cups of tea. You turned a personal insult into a public reckoning. Most people wouldn't have had the composure to do that in the moment. Selena accepted the tea, wrapping her hands around the warmth. Composure isn't just about keeping calm. It's about knowing where you want the road to end before you take the first step. I knew where I wanted this to end the moment she struck me. The room fell into a companionable silence. Outside, the ocean waves broke against the shore in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. Later, after Carlos and Mariah had left for their own rooms, Selena sat alone at the table with her laptop. She opened a blank document and began to type not for the press, not for the board, but for herself. She wrote about the years she had spent being underestimated, the moments she had swallowed injustice for the sake of strategy, the times she had chosen silence over confrontation because the timing wasn't right. And she wrote about today, the moment when timing and resolve had finally aligned. Her words were not polished, not yet meant for public eyes, but they carried the truth she knew would one day become part of a larger speech, maybe even a movement. Near midnight, she closed the laptop and stood at the window again. The horizon was dotted with more aircraft lights now, each one carrying its own stories, its own conflicts, its own quiet victories. Selena touched the Harper Aerospace pin at her lapel, feeling its cool metal against her skin. She whispered to herself, "The sky belongs to all of us." Then she turned away from the glass, knowing the work ahead would be long, but worth every step. 3 months later, the gates at Miami International looked the same on the surface. Passengers rolled suitcases. Flight attendants in crisp uniforms greeted boarding groups. The intercom announcements carried the same familiar cadence. But behind the scenes, the air was different. The Sky Vista Passenger Equity Program was no longer just an idea in a signed agreement. It had offices, staff, and authority. Complaints were now reviewed by an independent panel, not buried in a customer service queue. The first training cycles had begun, and already the stories were changing. Selena Harper had made sure of it. She stood near Gate 22 unannounced, watching as a young man in a wheelchair approached the counter. The gate agent knelt to speak to him at eye level, smiling as she confirmed his seat and boarding group. No rushing, no impatient gestures. It was a small thing, but Selena noticed. Carlos Vega joined her a moment later, holding 2 coffees. "You could have sent someone else to check on the program," he said. "I could have," Selena replied, But change means nothing if you don't see it with your own eyes. The young man's boarding pass printed, and he rolled away with a quiet, "Thank you." Selina watched until he was gone before accepting the coffee. News outlets still ran updates on the reforms. Some celebrated the transformation. Others treated it like a curiosity. And every now and then, someone would approach Selina in a terminal or a conference, sharing their own story of a moment when they had been made to feel like they did not belong. She kept each one in a private journal, not to relive the pain, but to remember the stakes. Across the country, Karen Holt's name appeared now and then in the context of the lawsuit she had filed against Sky Vista. It claimed wrongful termination, but the video made her case nearly impossible. Her attorney had attempted to argue self-defense, but the court of public opinion had already spoken. Selina felt no need to follow the details. The moment Karen had been escorted off the aircraft had been the real verdict. Mariah Gordon stepped up beside them now, a tablet tucked under her arm. "Your panel session starts in an hour. You'll be speaking right after the FAA administrator." Selina nodded, and the press afterward arranged. Mariah confirmed, "They want to talk about the Harper standards." Selina smiled faintly. The phrase had started as a sarcastic nickname from a Sky Vista executive, meant to imply her expectations were impossibly high. It had caught on for the opposite reason people liked the sound of holding an entire industry to a higher standard. A boarding call echoed through the concourse. Selina glanced toward the jet bridge. The sight of passengers stepping onto an aircraft still carried weight for her now. It was no longer just about travel. It was about trust. Carlos checked his watch. "We should head to the conference center." They walked together, weaving through the flow of travelers. As they moved, Selina caught fragments of conversation, people talking about vacation plans, business trips, reunions. None of them knew the ripple effect of what had happened months ago, or perhaps some did, in ways they could not put into words. At the conference center, the main hall was already full. Airline executives, aviation regulators, advocacy groups, and flight crew unions had gathered for the first national summit on passenger equity. Selina's speech would close the morning session. When her name was announced, the applause was immediate and sustained. She stepped to the podium, her Harper Aerospace pin catching the light. 3 months ago, she began, an incident aboard Sky Vista Airlines forced a reckoning. Many of you saw the video. Many of you debated the details. But what matters now is not the incident, it is the response. And it is the responsibility that comes after the response. She let the room settle. In the time since, we have proven that accountability can be more than a press release. It can be a structure, a process, and a culture. The Harper standards are not about punishing mistakes. They are about preventing harm, and when harm does occur, ensuring that it is addressed with speed, honesty, and fairness. She could see the faces in the crowd, some intent, some wary, some calculating. Change is not a single event. She continued, "It is a commitment to doing the right thing even when no one is watching. That means training until the right decision is instinctive. That means listening when passengers speak. And it means recognizing that the right to dignity is not a privilege you can take away. It is the baseline for any human interaction." Applause swelled again. After the session, reporters gathered in the press area. One asked if she believed the reforms would last. "They will," Selina said, "if people inside these companies choose to protect them. Policies are words. Culture is what you live every day." Another asked if she considered herself finished with Sky Vista. "I don't consider myself finished with any airline," she replied. "I'll be watching, as will many others." That's the point. By the time she left the conference center, the sun was setting. The light turned the terminal glass gold, much like that evening in Miami months ago. Selina paused at the curb before stepping into the car. She looked up as a plane roared overhead, its belly catching the last fire of the day. Mariah waited by the open door. Thinking about the flight, Selena smiled faintly, thinking about the sky. She settled into the seat, the door closing softly behind her. The city lights blurred past as the car pulled away, but she was already thinking ahead to the next reform, the next industry meeting, the next story of someone who had been told they did not belong. They would be told differently now, and for as long as she had a voice, they always would be. Some people think dignity is quiet, but they forget that quiet can shake the world. Selena Harper's story is not just about a slap on a plane. It's about what we choose to do when we're told we don't belong. It's about the power of holding your ground without raising your voice, and about the kind of leadership that doesn't just protect itself. It protects everyone watching. Her victory didn't end with one airline. It planted a seed of accountability that will grow as long as people demand better from companies, from leaders, from each other. But this story should also leave us unsettled, because for every Selena, there are countless others who have faced discrimination in silence, without cameras or public support. And until those stories stop happening, the work is not done. So the next time you see injustice, remember change can begin in a single moment, with a single choice. If this story moved you, like this video, share it so others can feel its impact, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge, inspire, and refuse to stay silent.